So welcome to this WIOA professional development session, this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. And I will be moderator and your technical support today, as well as one of your presenters. So we are excited to bring you this information today in this session on standing out in a virtual interview. Really focusing on virtual interview skills, tips, and just the importance of virtual interviewing and how we're seeing a dramatic increase in virtual interviewing. So again, my name is Kirsten Bayer. I am the Digital Communications Manager for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. We are a center housed in the EAF department, or the Education, Administration, and Foundations department at Illinois State University, and we focus on workforce development, providing support for all of the titles and partners. So a little bit more about me. I hold a bachelor's and a master's degree in communications and public speaking. And I actually teach a public speaking course, where we focus on interviewing skills. And one of the biggest things that have come into play in the classroom, for those of you who are Title II folks joining us, is virtual interviewing. And so that has kind of brought on this webinar to be presented to all of you today. And we're excited to present tools and tips and tricks that are things that I'm actually implementing in my classrooms and seeing implemented at the community colleges in the Title II sector. So a couple of things before we get started with the presentation and our other presenters today that are joining me. We just want to do our beginning Workforce Wednesday webinar polls. So the first one is, where's your local area? So if you could just tell us where you're joining us from this morning. If you are familiar with joining a Workforce Wednesday webinar, you are familiar with these polls, but we do appreciate your continued participation. And I'm joining you from Central Illinois this morning, so I'm not answering the poll, but I'll let you all know where I'm joining you from. And we'll give everyone a couple more seconds. Okay, so it looks like most of you are joining us from Central Illinois, and the rest of you from the northern part of the state, but we have a couple from the southern part of the state, and one even statewide. So welcome. We are excited for you to join us this morning. The next poll that we just want for our analytical purposes is, which partner do you best represent? So which title do you best represent, or are you from another WIOA partner or stakeholder, or state or local workforce innovation board? So I'm seeing those come through here. Give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end that and share the results. Looks like some of you we're kind of across the board, aren't we? So we have a couple from Title I, Title II, Title III. We have all of the titles here, and some other WIOA partners and stakeholders as well. So thank you for joining us. We really feel like this information is applicable for all of the partners, so we're excited to present it to you. So for the agenda today, we're going to cover a brief introduction of virtual interviewing, and then we're going to go over some virtual interview tips, and then we're going to do an introduction to the Illinois workNet interview prep tool. That is fairly new, and we're going to be joined by Illinois workNet, and they're going to go over that tool with us with a demonstration. So the first thing we want to touch on is just virtual interviews. Really, what are virtual interviews? I think we kind of all have a brief understanding of what they are, but I want to break it down, and then I want to just reinforce how prevalent virtual interviewing is right now, currently, post-pandemic, still kind of in the pandemic a little bit. And then also, how prevalent they're probably going to be in the future. So a recent poll of 1,100 U.S. employers conducted by Indeed.com, which is a recruiting website, found that 82% of respondents said that they adopted virtual interviews for candidates because of the pandemic. And we know this, right? Most people who were hiring during the pandemic were doing virtual interviews of some sort. Nearly all of those employers who took the survey, 93% exactly, expect to continue to use virtual interviews in the future in some capacity. So, meaning that virtual interviews are really here to stay. And virtual interviewing compared to in-person interviewing, while similar in nature and similar as to how you would prepare for them, does have some substantive differences. And I think it's a real skill to be able to virtually interview. And we're seeing that, right, as we're coming out of the pandemic, and people getting more comfortable with being in front of a webcam, or, some people not getting more comfortable. And so we're kind of seeing the ability to be able to convey what you would normally convey in an in-person interview as the person who's seeking a job, or even the person who's hiring, being able to convey your company or your entity and how you want this person to come work for you. We're seeing that be a real skill that we're needing to provide to everybody in the state. So in another survey from a recruiting software provider, JobVite found that 61% of the surveyed recruiters who are recruiting for these jobs, for the populations that all of you who are in the titles are serving, said that the hiring process will be a combination of virtual and in-person going forward. 22% said that they plan to conduct all virtual hiring. So we're seeing 61% of recruiters saying that, post-pandemic, all of their hiring is going to have some virtual component. We're really seeing the phone interview go away. And it's interesting to me because when I do this in my classroom, when I discuss this topic in my classroom and we actually do a project on virtual interviewing, it's interesting how many of my students are no longer experiencing phone interviews, even for things such as like part-time jobs that they're doing while they're in school full-time. So we're really seeing the phone interview disappear, and we're seeing that being replaced by a form of a virtual interview, with that second interview and so on, either being virtual or in person. So the whole interviewing process, we're really seeing have a virtual component moving forward. So just as a brief overview, there are two types of virtual interviewing. The first is a live video interview, or known as a two-way live interview. And this is used as a replacement for in-person interviews in a remote environment. And typically we see this using video conference tools. So using something like Zoom or Teams or Google Meet to conduct that interview. So there's still a lot of the same components as an in-person interview, because you're still able to talk through the webcam, through the computer, through the internet to another person who's on the other side of the screen. There are some, deterrents in terms of like body language and things like that, but there's also some positives as well. And then the second way of virtual interviewing is actually known as one-way interviews. And we're seeing this not be as well known of a way to conduct virtual interviews, but privatized companies are actually really starting to integrate this in their hiring processes. So this is typically used earlier in the hiring process as a preliminary screening, and it's not necessarily meant to replace face-to-face live interactions, but we are seeing it like in the workforce, just replacing kind of that phone interview, that preliminary screen interview. So just a quick poll. I just want to know, like, you're reflecting on your own experience, or maybe reflecting on experiences that you've used with some of your students or some of the people that you're serving in your titles. Have you ever done a live video interview or a two-way interview? So have you ever done an interview via Zoom? Some of you are raising your hand. I'm actually going to put up a poll here. So have you ever done a live video interview? That's the first question. So you can select yes or no. And then was it more, like, would you say in general, was it more difficult or less difficult than a face-to-face in-person interview? And the options are more difficult, less difficult, or maybe you kind of felt like it was the same amount of difficulty to prepare. And then as you're kind of reflecting on that experience, whether you answered, more or less, if you want to type in the chat, let me make sure that everybody can. If you want to type in the chat, and you should be able to now, I had it disabled, so I apologize, but everyone should be able to post in the chat now. Why was your live video interview experience more or less difficult? Like, what are some of the things that made it more or less difficult in your opinion or in your experience? Or maybe it's some of the things that you've seen your clients have to deal with. What were those types of things that made it more or less difficult than an in-person interview? So somebody said it's something totally new and different. So maybe that made it more difficult. Benjamin says mine was more difficult because the panel could see me, but I could not see the panel. Yeah, that's really difficult, Benjamin. Anyone else? Maybe some of you who thought it was less difficult? Jonathan says less difficult because you didn't have to commute. Absolutely. Great. So thank you for your participation. I'm going to end that poll, share the results for you all to kind of see. So most of you said, 58% of you said yes, that you have done a live video interview. 42% of you said no, that you haven't had to do one yet. So maybe that's just because you haven't had to experience that, like you've stayed in the same position throughout the pandemic, or maybe you just haven't had your clients had to experience that either, which is you're very lucky, but I think you're going to have that experience either yourself or see one of the people that you're serving in your titles have that experience in the future. And then a lot of you said it was less difficult or the same amount of difficulty. In the chat, we have Christine, who says being on the computer was less pressure than being in person. And she was able to use Post-it notes during her interview. So she kind of was able to have notes, whereas opposed to an in-person interview, you might not have brought those notes for fear of seeming underprepared, I would assume, Christine. So yeah, thank you for participating in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that and we're going to move on to the next poll. So the next question is, now moving on from live video interviewing, have you ever done a one-way video interview? So just to elaborate further on a one-way video interview, this is where you're interviewing, but there's no person on the other side of the webcam, right? You're not using Zoom or Google Meet. You're using some sort of platform that's recording your answer. And then that recording is being sent to a hiring manager or being sent to a panel of people. So have you ever done a one-way virtual interview? Select yes or no. And then did you feel like that was more or less difficult than a face-to-face in-person interview? And then if you want to type your why in the chat, feel free to do that as well. I'm assuming that most of you are going to have less experience with this. Oops, I need to launch the poll. I'm sorry. So I launched it there so you can answer now. But, I'm assuming that most of you have had less experience with one-way virtual interviewing, but we are seeing companies and, even state agencies pretty much purchasing these platforms to hold this one-way version of virtual interviewing where you're presented with a question and then you are actually recorded with your answer. Funny enough, just to share something personal, my husband is currently interviewing for jobs on a fire department, municipal fire departments across the state of Illinois. And he just experienced his first one-way virtual interview for a municipal fire department, which was really interesting that they were even adopting this version of one-way interviewing as well. Okay, so I'm going to end that poll, but if you want to share the why, I had a couple people put that it was more difficult. If you want to share your why was it more difficult in the chat? So more could not see. Christine said it was more difficult for a one-way interview because you could not see the interviewer's physical responses and facial expressions. Absolutely. Jonathan said it was more pressure to get the recording right. Absolutely. No idea if the outtakes were actually deleted or if the employer could see the outtakes. Yeah. So a lot of these platforms will allow you to retake your recording and they time you as well. They'll give you 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question, depending on how elaborate the question is. And yeah, that's a great point, Jonathan. It is kind of nerve-wracking as somebody who's interviewing to not know if the versions of the recording that you're messing up and you're redoing, are those versions saved anywhere? Is that hiring manager seeing those versions? So yeah, that's kind of daunting, huh? Okay, so I'm going to share the results. Looks like most of you said no, that you haven't had to experience this before, but I think we're really going to start seeing this become prevalent, more and more prevalent in the workforce system. And then the ones of you who have done a one-way virtual interview said that it was definitely more difficult. And I can absolutely see that. And the way you prepare for a one-way virtual interview compared to the way you would prepare for an in-person interview, compared to the way you would prepare for a live or two-way virtual interview, while all of them have like similar components, there are major differences to that skill set. And so that's kind of, some things that we want to focus on today. So why are employers and why is the workforce focusing and driving a lot of their efforts for hiring to virtual interviewing? So one of the main benefits, and a couple of you said like commuting was a main benefit to some type of virtual interviewing, is just that accessibility factor. Whether, it's somebody who has a disability, it's not as easily attainable for them to get to an interview that would be in person, or it's something as like a commute, or somebody who, if you have children at home, just trying to like be more accessible in general in the interviewing and hiring process allows employers and the workforce system to reach people who they typically would not be able to reach. And we're seeing that huge initiative come out of the pandemic. And it's, in my opinion, it's one of the most positive things that have come out of the pandemic. It's a shorter time to hire for the employer. So the employer is able to make hiring decisions quicker. Time is money type of mentality. It's more streamlined, same kind of thing. And then it's a better candidate experience for some because applicants have more control over when and where they interview. So obviously, if you're an applicant, like say you're serving somebody in your title, a client who's applying for jobs, as somebody who's applying for jobs, virtual interviewing does have a lot of benefits. They can wear sweatpants on the bottom and a blazer and coat and shirt jacket on top. So the way they dress, the way, with the way they prepare, we had in the chat that somebody was able to have Post-it notes, right? So that's a benefit. So it's just it allows for the candidate to have more control over the hiring and the virtual interviewing experience than they normally would in an in-person interview. So specifically benefits to one-way virtual interviewing, because that's really what the tool that David's going to show you later is. It's a practice tool for one-way virtual interviews. And two-way virtual interviews, you can use it to practice for that as well. But for purposes of like my classroom, I use it to introduce my students to one-way virtual interviewing. And so it standardizes the preliminary interview process. It boosts hiring collaboration because when you're the interviewee and you submit a recording, the hiring manager is able to send that to and view it, not only themselves, but also to a whole panel of people. And they don't have to work around their schedules, right? They can watch that recording whenever they have time throughout their work day or their work week. So this boosts hiring collaboration because it allows for more people to view the candidates. It results in better hiring outcomes because, again, we're able to see and view more people, which is kind of the next bullet point, which is employers can interview more people, giving candidates more opportunities. So typically, if I was hiring for a position, I can only interview so many people within a certain amount of time before I have to make a hiring decision, right? But if I'm able to do a one-way virtual interview where I don't even have to schedule a Zoom, right? My person the candidate is getting on my platform, doing the recording, answering the questions, and then they are able to submit that recording to me, and then I can view that on my own time, and so can all the other people on my hiring panel. So it allows for me as the employer to actually interview more people and potentially get the best person for that job. And then the decision on whether a candidate advances isn't solely dependent on one person anymore, right? So again, we can send it to the whole hiring team or people on our team and hiring managers that typically might not have been involved in the hiring process, or maybe they couldn't make it that day to the interview because their kid got sick or whatever. I can send them the recording of the interview, and it helps reduce that bias for hiring decisions. So virtual interviewing overall produces a lot of these benefits, whether it's a one-way interview or a two-way interview. And so that's kind of the premise and the overarching reason why we feel like virtual interviewing skills and being able to effectively know tips and tricks on how to prepare for a virtual interview and just how to prepare for interviewing in general is so important. So next, I'm going to hand it off to David Garvey from Illinois WorkNet. David is the training and development specialist there, and he works for the Center for Workforce Development at SIU Carbondale. And so he works for Illinois WorkNet, and he's going to introduce us to our next speaker and do a demonstration on the tool from Illinois WorkNet. So David, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for sharing this information and inviting Fred and myself to participate in this. Very excited from Illinois WorkNet's point of view from sharing this interview prep tool. It's a fairly recent tool that we're excited to finally share with everybody. But first, we're going to hear some great tips and advice when it comes to interviewing from Fred Hairston of National Able Network. And Fred Hairston is a learning and development manager and has been in the training industry for over 15 years. He has worked in the mental health, education, and workforce development sectors and possesses a Bachelor of Sciences degree in psychology and a Master of Arts degree in human resource development. In addition to managing the National Able Network's Learning and Development Department, he also facilitates webinars and classroom workshops such as effective job search planning, resume development, and interviewing skills. He also conducts employee leadership sessions to assess and develop the organization's staff resources. He prides himself in meeting his clients where they are, and through collaboration promotes the utilization of an individual's and/or company's strengths to achieve their professional goals. And with that, I will turn things over to you, Fred.
Excellent, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Just want to make sure that I transition well here. Can people see my screen?
Yeah, looks great, Fred.
Good. Excellent, excellent. So, David, thank you for that great introduction. Yeah, I've been in the industry for quite a while, and I know that people, it's all of the work as a job seeker it's on the shoulders of the job seeker. And so you do all of this work, you do your research, you put together your resume, you get ideally your elevator pitch all ready to go, and then you show up for that interview, and then it's like, okay, let's just get this over with as quickly as possible. I don't want to be here. I don't know how to talk about myself. And everything just kind of shuts down. So what I'd like to do today is take a different approach and speak to, the importance of the interview, whether it's virtual or in person. And there's things that you should be looking for and things that you should be doing throughout every stage of the interview process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some just basic strategies that you should have in mind, regardless of whether you are the actual job seeker or you're supporting people who are looking for work. Things that you should be doing, strategies that you should have in mind, and reclaiming control of that interview experience. So one of the first things that everyone should do, especially if you're a job seeker and you're looking for work, you want to be doing your homework. You want to be doing your homework. You don't want to just show up for the interview. And many people do that. They're just like, well, I've done everything that I need to do. I gave them my resume. Don't they know everything about me based on my resume? But no, that's not enough. That's not enough. So you want to do your work, your homework, your research. And often I will tell people, you need to know about that company. You need to know that job description, and you also should have like a salary range in mind. So just to pose this question to the audience, where can I find information on the company? And you can use your chat feature to respond. But where can I find information on the company? Yep, so Miriam's sharing you the company website. Where else? Google search. Yes, I love the Google search part because, I often joke, when you go to a company's website, they're going to promote their company and you may only see one side. But if you do a Google search, you may find out that that company is under investigation by the federal government. And so maybe that's not the best company to work for. So you definitely want to look for that. Job postings, Miriam shared that as well. You might find out more about the company there. Kirsten, shared LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn for so many different reasons, and you definitely can find information there. But you want to look at the company. You want to find information there, and you may be surprised. There may be connections that you have, people that have worked for that company, or someone that you know who knows someone who knows someone who works at that particular company, and they can give you that insider intel about that particular company. The other research that you should do is you should know that job description inside and out. You want to look for those keywords, that industry-specific buzzwords, keywords, terminology, and you want to be able to use that information during your interview. So knowing the essential functions of the job, are you aware of that? Do you know what they are expecting you to do for that particular role? And are you sharing that information during the interview? Often I will tell people, they may have your resume, but other than that, they have no idea who you are. So if you don't share with them your skill sets, your abilities, your experience, and how you can make an impact to that department or organization, you've got to share that information. And the great place to start is with that job posting, because you want to convey that, yes, you are a good match, if not the best match for that role. Also, salary. Do people look up salary or investigate salary numbers before going on an interview? Has anyone done that before? So I've got one yes. I think that was Veronica that was saying yes to that. Benjamin as well. Benjamin as well. As I shared earlier, the brunt of the work is on the shoulders of the job seeker. So you want to be prepared. You want to know, after you've done all of this work, is the salary that they're offering, is that going to help you meet your financial obligations? And I often tell people you should have a salary range in mind, the very least that you would accept, the number that is truly representative of your skill sets and your abilities. And then that last number is your negotiation number. And we go into a lot more detail with respect to that in the workshops that we offer. But some great resources for that. I don't know if people have used My Next Move. We love My Next Move. LinkedIn can provide salary information. Payscale.com can provide information. And there's all kinds of things that are out there. Glassdoor, I love Glassdoor. Such a great resource. So you want to have your salary range in mind, because that's going to help you when that salary question comes up, typically towards the end of the interview or like in a subsequent interview. As Kirsten was sharing, things have changed. And so you may go through multiple virtual interviews or a combination of in-person and virtual interviews before you are possibly extended that job offer. So you want to be prepared through all of that. So we've got some other people sharing some hands. I didn't see that. So hopefully I didn't miss anybody. If I did, if there's any questions that people have, we're going to have a Q&A session towards the end of both of our presentations, all of our presentations. And if I missed anyone, make sure that you know what that question was so that we can address that for you. So yes. Oh, okay, thank you, Kirsten. Thank you. It was about salaries. Thank you. So oftentimes what I will share with people is we want to get away from that mindset of, I just want to show up, that the interview is just, it's a one-time deal. I get in and I get out and I hope that it ends as quickly as possible. You want to be strong through all of the stages of the interview process. There are things that you should be doing before the interview, whether it's in person or virtual, like making sure that you're ready to go, making sure that you're organized, making sure that you have all of your support materials all ready to go, making sure that your webcam works well, that you're familiar with the platform that you're using for the virtual interview. You want to make sure that all of that is in place before the interview actually starts. During the interview, whether it's a one-way, well, primarily for a two-way virtual interview and then an in-person interview, your main goal is to communicate that you are a good fit for that role, that you are attempting to build rapport with the interviewer, and that you're also doing one thing, I'm going to share that a little bit later, you're doing one thing, very important, to make sure that you're determining if the role is going to be a good fit for you. So you're going to be doing that during the interview. So that's during the interview stage. And then like after the interview, are you following up? Have you done what you were supposed to do? And now you know when you're supposed to follow up. Are you also contacting your references to let them know that yes, you've been on an interview, that you let them know what went well, maybe some areas where you struggled a little bit, so that they can also be your support system, that they can back you up, so that your references are your advocates, for you to get that eventual job offer. So we want to see interviewing as a process, not just a one-time thing where you just kind of show up and get it over with. So yeah, we want to change our mindsets with respect to that. So there are four main types of interview questions that often will come up in person, but you may see these with virtual interviews as well. So you're going to have your standard interview questions, those questions that often come up no matter what the role, no matter who's interviewing, or what's going on. Those standard, typical interview questions. Then you'll have behavioral and situational interview questions. And there's a slight difference between the two, but the interviewer is asking them for a specific reason. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And then you have your technical interview questions. So just to break it down just a little bit more, you've got your standard interview questions. And so here's an example. Tell me about yourself. There's actually one thing that you can do where you'll never struggle with answering this question. Does anybody have a strategy, or what do you do if you're going to be answering this question? Tell me about yourself. And you can use your chat for me to let me know. Anybody have a particular strategy, or what do you do when posed this question? So Kirsten was sharing, focus on her skills and how they apply to the job description. Yes. Focusing on past experiences about myself and how that applies. Yes. Anyone else have a strategy or an approach? Because many people struggle with this question. It's like, well, what do I talk about? I'm not really sure. Do I talk about where I live? Do I talk about how many children I have? What should I be sharing with them? And the strategy that we suggest people use is creating your elevator pitch. I don't know if people have heard of that before, but your elevator pitch is going to really help you answer this question. You know, you want to talk about, and I call it like my 4 main points that I want to share very briefly, 30 to 60 seconds on average, but I'm going to be answering 4 main questions. I'm going to talk about who I am professionally, what I do well, my skills and my abilities relevant to the position. And many people struggle with that as well. They want to talk about everything, but we want it targeted to the actual job posting, to the position that you're interviewing for. So you want to talk about your skills and your abilities. You also want to talk about how you bring value. What are some accomplishments and achievements that you have been able to obtain that are relevant to the position? And you're going to hear me say that multiple times. Everything that you share during the interview should be relevant to the position and how it showcases how you are a good fit for that role. And then what you're looking for, meaning what type of an experience are you wanting to get out of the role? Is it additional skill development? Is it contributing more to the industry? Is it just being a part of a larger mission? Maybe you've done your research and you see that the company is a great company. They've got a great mission and vision statement, and you just want to be a part of what they do. But this is going to help you address this tell me about yourself question. In one of our workshops, we actually have a template that you can use to help you flesh out your elevator pitch. Your elevator pitch will also help you with your summary of qualifications development for your resume. It'll also help you with your LinkedIn About You section. It'll help with that. It'll also help with networking. So your elevator pitch is such a great, great tool, and it really helps to answer that question, tell me about yourself. Here are some other standard interview questions that might come up, and there's strategies to each of them. Once again, I don't want people just to show up for the interview. And as professionals who are as workforce development professionals who are supporting others in doing well in interviewing, we want to keep this in mind. It's not that you're dumbing yourself down or anything like that. It's about your strategy that you are using to put you in the best possible light professionally for that role. So great, great stuff there. Great stuff there. Oh yeah, Jonathan had shared about some of his hobbies and education, what he does in his free time, and using that to determine if he will be a good fit, because Jonathan has tapped into one of the things that you should be doing in addition to all of the other information that you're sharing during your interview. And so we're going to touch on that a little bit. So just very quickly, some of the other strategies you can use in addition to your elevator pitch. What is your biggest weakness? For some reason, and I don't know what it is, but I see it time and time again, people are just waiting to tell what they're not good at. I don't know what it is. So what is your biggest weakness? Well, I've got 50 of them, and let me tell you all of them right now. Don't do that. I don't know what that tendency is, but you want to use the strategy where you want to talk about an opportunity for professional growth or professional development, and then what you specifically did to address that. And you don't want to give trite or kind of like overused responses like, I'm a perfectionist, or I'm a hard worker, that's my weakness. Well, things like that, if you're a perfectionist, you could be seen as someone who's going to be slowing the team down. Or if you're a hard worker, do you have a good grasp on work-life balance and things like that? Are you going to be working so hard that you become burnt out and that they're going to have to replace you? So, you want to have that strategy behind it. Like, what was an opportunity for professional development, professional growth, and then what did you do to address and or achieve that? What are your salary expectations? Something else that people struggle with, often it will come up either towards the end of the first interview, or like in our current way of doing things, often like the second or third interview, salary may come up. And you want to have a strategy here as well. You've got that salary range in mind, but remember, you do not want to bring up questions about salary or benefits. You want it to come from the interviewer, because you don't want to be seen as someone who is just focused in on salary and benefits. Even though it's important, even though it's significant, that's not a question that comes from you. And once again, there's a strategy on how you address that. And let's see if people can read my mind here. If they say, all right, so Fred, how much money do you want to make? And I give them a number that's too low, what have I done? What do people think I've done? So yes, yeah, exactly, Kirsten. Yes, I'm not valuing what I have to offer the employer. And if I give them a number that's too high, what have I done? Yes, I want to start out in this entry-level position and I want to make $100,000 a year. What am I doing? I'm overselling myself, but I'm also pricing myself out of that role. So you want to do your research. You want to have your own salary range. You want to know what the salary range for that position or that industry in your region, because it will vary from region to region. And you want to have a number in mind if they push it, if they really, really push it. But ideally, your response should be something like, well, I've done my research and I know that there's a salary range for this role, and I know that I'm in that range, I'm within that range. What did you have in mind? So, a strategy similar to that. And then that last standard interview question, why should I hire you? You should know this. Why should the employer consider you for the role? What are you going to bring to the role that's different from everyone else? And of course, you're not a mind reader, so you don't know the other candidates, but what is it that you do that impacts the team or will impact the team and make it a positive experience for all? So for example, one of the things that I would often say is, when it gets really, really tough, when it gets really, really demanding, when people are really, really stressed out, I use my sense of humor to bring things down a little bit, to bring the team together, to help us refocus on what we're doing and not be so stressed out. Not so many people are able to do that. Many people aren't able to do that, but that's something that I bring to the to the working experience. So you should know that question, or the answer to that question, why should I hire you? Okay, so spend a lot of time on standard interview questions because, as I said, they often come up. And a great tip is to Google interview questions for the role that you're seeking. Glassdoor is a great resource for that, because you'll often hear of some of the questions that people encountered, how the interview process went. Great resource for that. But Google as well, such a great resource. So those are those first types of interview questions. Then we have our behavioral and then situational interview questions. And we're seeing a lot more of these recently. It's the employer's attempt to get a sense of who you are, if you fit within the team, as well as how do you deal with the unplanned or unpredictable aspect of work. So they may ask you behavioral interview questions that ask you to recall a specific experience or a type of experience, and then they want to know how you handled it. So, and it's often prefaced by, tell me about a time when, or something along those lines. Situational interview questions are more of a hypothetical nature, and they will pose this hypothetical situation and then ask you how you would handle it. They're trying to get you to, well, I'll say it this way. many people, that really, are focused on interviewing well will practice, they'll do their research, they'll, kind of go over their responses to particular questions. So you may be asked a situational question just to get you to deal with the unexpected. They want to see how you deal with the unexpected. So what would you do if you saw a coworker stealing? Or what would you do if a coworker repeatedly comes to work late and you have to do their work? Or things like, how many basketballs would fit into this room? Things like that. They want to pose something that you're probably not going to expect, and then they want to see your thought processes along those lines. And so there's a great strategy to use in answering a behavioral and situational question. So I have an example on the screen for you, and the strategy that we would use with that is known as SAR. Now, many people may have heard of this, or they may have heard of it with different acronyms, like I've heard STAR and PAR and SOAR, but we like SAR. SAR works for us. And so what you're going to do is you're going to speak to the situation very briefly, and then focus on what you specifically did, and then what was the result or the outcome of your action. So here's an example. So we're dealing with this, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer. So I'm going to start off by describing the situation very briefly, though. Many people love to walk down memory lane. Let me tell you about this situation that I had to deal with this customer. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. I think it was snowing, and I was wearing my best suit, and there were a lot of, it's like, no. Very briefly, be very concise about the situation. So in this example, I had a customer. She was really, really upset. She was yelling and screaming because she felt like she had been disrespected by another staff person, and she was so upset about it that she wanted to file a complaint. Short and sweet and to the point. Here's where we start giving the interviewer what they're listening for, what they want to hear. You want to talk about what you specifically did. And so this is what you want to keep in mind when you're working with others and helping them with their interviewing skills, or if you've got an interview coming up soon. So you want to talk about your experience. So you're falling back on your customer service training. I first apologized. I used a really calm voice because she was really, really upset. And I started to ask her some clarifying questions to get a better sense of what occurred. I empathize for her having to go through that experience, and I suggested ways that we could resolve the issue. So you're very specific about what you did. And then you wrap it all up by sharing what the result was. And so in the end, the customer was very appreciative of the time that I'd taken with her. She left very, very happy, pleased. She said she wasn't going to file a complaint, and she was going to come back for more of our services. So what do you guys think of that strategy? What do you think of that strategy when answering those behavioral or situational interview questions? What do you think? Okay, so Jonathan is sharing that it's efficient. Anyone else? Shows a value of time. Sounds good, makes sense. Veronica, thank you for that. Yeah, and so you can use the structure of this response to help you stay on point with your response. Oh, so they throw a behavioral question at you. And so, well, there was a situation. This is what I specifically did, and here was the outcome or the result. Oh, so what would you do if you had to figure out how to deal with employees who weren't coming in all the time, and you had to do their work for them? Well, I would hope that I would not have to experience that situation. But if I did, this is what I would do, and I would work towards this result or towards this outcome. And when it's dealing with situational interview questions, you can also follow up with, is that something that this department does? Is this something that this organization follows? Is it a procedure that works well here? So you can use that to help you follow up. So yeah, we find it to be a great, great strategy, really, really helpful for people. Then the last type of interview question is going to be those technical interview questions. And so here they're just trying to determine your skill sets, your abilities. You know, can you perform those essential functions of the job? They also use technical questions to see how you approach problem solving, how you troubleshoot issues, and if you do things that are in tune with how the department or how the organization does things, like the company culture, things like that. And once again, I can't stress this enough. You can Google interview questions specific to a role. Now, you're not going to get all of the questions that you may be asked, whether it's a virtual interview or in-person interview, but it's going to help you prepare. And you want to be as prepared as you can. All right. So that one thing that I was alluding to earlier, the one thing that you should make sure that you are doing during an interview, and you want to communicate this to yourself and to everyone else, you want to make sure that you are asking questions. Very, very important. If they ask me, so Fred, do you have any questions? And I say no, you've answered all of my questions. What assumptions might they make? What assumptions might the interviewer make? Nope, I don't have any questions. You've answered them all. Okay, here's your sharing that you don't have much interest in the company. Lack of interest, yeah. Cassia was sharing that as well. Yep, Veronica as well, not too interested in the job. The interviewee is dull. I like that, Jonathan. I hope not. I hope that they're not making that assumption. But yeah, you don't want to make, you don't want them to make these types of assumptions. So asking questions is key. So some of my favorite ones, Kirsten's also sharing, you aren't prepared with your own questions for a mutually beneficial relationship. I love that. I love that. So here's some great questions. As you do your research, questions may come to you, but here's some of my favorite ones. And Miriam is sharing, they didn't care enough to do research in order to have questions prepared. They may reflect on how they will research future projects. Interesting. We don't want them making those types of assumptions. So here's some of my favorite ones, favorite questions. And I'm sure you guys have many more. And typically 3 to 5 questions to ask. That's about right. That's about right. But if you're doing the other thing that you should be doing, which is engaging with the interviewer, building rapport, building a connection, this interview should morph into a conversation. That's the way that you want to see it. You've connected, you've bonded, you've communicated. It turns into a conversation. That's going to be your eventual goal. So here's a great question I love. Can you walk me through a typical day in this position? Oftentimes the job posting won't give you a sense of that. So this is a great, great question to ask, because then that's going to help you determine, is this the type of work that I want to do? Is it going to be inviting and engaging, or am I going to be expected to work 80 hours a day? Great, great question to ask. What are the next steps in the interview process? Another great question to ask, because that's going to help you with following up. So what's the next step in the interview process? Well, we're going to be interviewing probably for the rest of the week. At that time, we should be able to make a decision. Then you can follow up and say, well, is it okay if I contact you at that point to determine the status of the hiring process? So a great, great question to ask. Here's another one. What's the biggest challenge you see for this role? And based on their response, that gives you an opportunity to speak to your skills, your abilities, and how you can impact it. If they say, well, your day is always different, you're going to be meeting all kinds of different types of people, you'll never be bored in this position. Depending on, your personality and what you're looking for, that's a great response. Or it could be the response of, well, I was looking for something more straightforward. Now, of course, you're not going to share that, but it's like, no, I was looking for something where my day is predictable and I know what I'm going to be doing when I walk through the door and then when I leave. This always changing, always going, always, meeting new people, all these other kinds of things, that might not be a good fit for you. Nothing wrong with the role, nothing wrong with you, but you're trying to determine if the role is going to be a good fit for you. So great question to ask. And then I love this question. Why do you enjoy working here? If they say something along the lines of, well, the benefits are great. And that's all they say. It's like, oh, that should be giving you a little bit of pause. Or if they say, similar to my previous response or answer, I love it that I'm always challenged. I'm always learning new things. There's, just opportunities for professional growth. And I love the culture and the mindset. That's great information for you to have. Either way. So you definitely want to have effective questions. You want to definitely ask those questions and provide follow-up questions as well. Because here's the main thing. Just like they are trying to determine if you are a good fit for the position, you should be determining if they are going to be a good fit for you. Take back your power with this. Don't just put yourself at the mercy of the interviewer. Mercy of the interviewer. You want to make sure that this is going to be a good fit for you. Okay, so to tie it all together, these are the things that we cover when we talk about the virtual interviews. And so how would people prepare? How would you prepare for a virtual interview? You can use the chat just to tell me some things that come to mind. All right. Let's see. So Kirsten was sharing that she uses the Illinois workNet tool that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So that is great. What are some things that come to people's mind? So Benjamin is stating reviews his resume to pick out key points that are relevant to the position. Miriam, Miriam's on point. Yeah, testing the internet connection and finding a quiet place to take the interview, checking your lighting. Yeah, that's what we share in our virtual interview workshop. Many of the points that I shared earlier, they're, applicable, if you're doing a face-to-face or a virtual interview, especially if it's a two-way interview, virtual interview. But the main difference is the technology. So, of course, you want to practice, you want to do your research, you want to be aware of what's going on. But, another thing you want to think about, what's your webcam placement like? Are you cutting off the top of your head? Do they only see your neck? Many people don't pay attention to their webcam placement. They also don't think about lighting. Is the light source in front of you so that it shines on your face versus coming from behind you, where then you're going to see more of a silhouette. Like, you're not going to be able to be seen clearly. And that's what you want, because you want the interviewer to be able to build rapport with you and vice versa. As Miriam was sharing, yeah, your internet, is that working? The platform that you're using, whether it's Cisco WebEx or Google Meets or Zoom, are you familiar with some of the features of that particular platform, so that if, you desire to share support materials or maybe share a website during the virtual interview, do you know how to access that? Yeah, Jonathan was sharing, he puts his webcam at eye level. Yes, that's exactly what you want to do. Think of that little dot as their eyes. So you want to do that. Think about your surroundings. Have you secured your surrounding? Are the children, pets, loud, loud people that you share your space with? Have they been secured? What's behind you? Are you using like a virtual background? And if you are using a virtual background, are you minimizing your movement? Because if you move too much, that causes shadows and ghosting, as I call it. So thinking about that. And then how do you appear? I often tell people, dress from head to toe, because you never know if a pencil rolls off the desk or whatever you're doing to take notes, or you've got to stand up for some reason. You don't want them to see professional on the top, party and comfort on the bottom. So thinking about that. And then, of course, your audio. Can you hear them? And can they hear you clearly? Things like that. So we go into a lot more detail with respect to all of these in our virtual interviews workshop. So if that's of interest to you, definitely come our way. So great stuff. Miriam also shared hiding private information that might be in the background. So, that's interesting. If for whatever reason you're doing an interview at a place where maybe, the best place that you could find would be at a place where, maybe you've got a desk where you've got things on your desk that have like personal information, like your name or a social security number or things like that. Yeah, you definitely want to do that. And then hiding your laundry and your other kind of messiness that might be there. Yeah, because people will make assumptions. You'd be so surprised on what's in the view of the interviewer during a virtual interview, what they can see with their webcam. So you want to watch all of that. So we talked about a lot today. So just to recap some of our points, you definitely want to be prepared for each stage, each step of the interview process. Definitely do your research. We talked about that and where you can find information on the company and salary, things like that. Another thing about job postings and job descriptions, if you encounter one that doesn't have a lot of content, look for other job descriptions for that job title. That may provide additional information for you. Your elevator pitch is going to so help you with this question, tell me about yourself. So many people struggle with that. So we talked about that and the importance of that. And then we also talked about how SAR, situation, action, result, can help you answer those behavioral and situational based interview questions. It's a great way to structure your responses to help you stay on point. And then lastly, it's so important to ask questions, because that's going to communicate your interest in the position, as well as, are they going to be a good fit for you? You want to find that out. So later on today, David's going to be talking about the Illinois WorkNet site and the tools that you can use to help you with that. But one of my mottos is use any and every resource that's out there, because many people aren't aware of the different resources that are out there. So Illinois WorkNet is a great resource. We also have our Remarkable Careers site where you can attend our Microsoft training offerings, our Jumpstart job readiness offerings. There are self-directed courses, as well as courses that are facilitated with one of my team. And so definitely take a look at that. You have access to a Remarkable Resumes Career Builder, the different quizzes that you can take after attending a workshop that enables you to get a certificate of completion and a badge that you can add to your LinkedIn profile. All kinds of great information. So that ends my presentation. I want to thank everybody for attending. If there's any questions, we'll address those towards the end of the session. But now I'm going to hand it over to David, and he can share with us all of the great things about the Illinois WorkNet site.
Thank you so much, Fred. That was fantastic. And really appreciate you being on the call this morning. So I want to, before we get into the demonstration of the tool itself, there were a few slides I wanted to go over. The first was just, an introduction of the interview prep tool on Illinois WorkNet and what it is. So it is a tool that allows you to practice for these interviews. So, using all this information that's been shared by Kirsten and Fred, once it comes time to answering these questions and trying to figure out how best to answer them, you can use this tool to record your responses and figure out how to improve or enhance these questions, see them in real time, how your voice sounds. If you have the camera, the video on, you can determine your body language and what you may want to improve as you're answering these questions. But the interview prep tool has over 1,000 types of different interviews and each of those have multiple questions. And so, as I mentioned, you can also record these responses to your interviews in a few different ways that we'll get into. You can also customize and create your own interview and choose from over 12,000 questions that are available. So if you wanted to, pick a set of questions that you have in mind, you can absolutely do so and practice that way as well. And by practicing this, again, you can begin to think about how best you can answer questions that may come up during the interview. And to access the tool, it is free to use with an Illinois WorkNet account. And once your account has been created, and we'll get into this momentarily, you'll just log in. You'll click the resumes button in the banner and select the Take a Practice Interview. And just some tech tips to kind of reiterate and drive home, as that were mentioned previously. Make sure that your microphone and webcam are working properly. Close any programs that may be using these features, like video chat programs such as Skype or FaceTime. Prior to an interview, if you know what webinar platform or what meeting platform it'll be on, I would encourage you to make sure that, with all the technology you have, the internet, microphone, speakers, webcam, that all that's working ahead of time to make sure that you're all set. Additionally, a lot of the webinar platforms like Zoom or Teams, they'll have updates pretty frequently. And sometimes when you go to access it or log in, it will prompt you to update it. It may force you to update it then and there. So I would recommend to make sure that you have the latest version of that software. That way, in the odd chance you're running a few minutes late, you already have the latest version and you can log in and you're not, kind of sidetracked, kind of adding a little anxiety to the interview right beforehand. So make sure that you have the latest version installed. And if you know that, your internet speed works in a better in one area of the house or where you are than another, certainly go to that area. And I guess that would be about it. Some of the other basics, just make sure you're able to easily mute and unmute yourself, and you're able to access any files you may want to send. All right, so with that, I'll go ahead and change it over to the live demonstration here. So our website, illinoisworknet.com, is right here. And this is our homepage here. And you'll need to create an account in order to access the tool. And you can create an account by clicking this sign up icon and filling out the information there. And once you have your account set up, what you'll do is you'll click the login icon and enter your login information. And once you're logged in, we'll click this resumes icon here in this banner, and that'll redirect us to the skills first area where we can create a number of different documents. Now, if this is the first time you're accessing the skills first within Illinois WorkNet, it may ask you to verify your email, and you'll just do that quick verification process. But yeah, then you'll be redirected here. And there's a number of features that we can do within Skills First. And so we can create a resume, create a cover letter, an elevator pitch, as Fred had alluded to, at the start of an interview, they may ask you, who are you, or can you tell us about yourself? And there's the ability to have to create an elevator pitch in here. We can also create a portfolio of work. Take a practice interview, which we'll click here in a second. And we can also watch career advice videos and take a short career assessment. And below this section here, just wanted to point out, this is our personal galleries area. So when whatever documents you're working on within Skills First, whether it's a resume, cover letter, elevator pitch, practice interview, you can quickly access your saved files and documents here just by selecting these icons. But today, we're going to, of course, focus on taking a practice interview. So once we click that button, we'll then see our list of options here. And so we have over 1,000 interviews here. And we can do a keyword search to browse through the available interviews. And so when we do find one that we are interested in, let's say, for instance, this first one here, you'll click the name of it. And then if you scroll down, you'll see where the interview is. So we can see that in this interview, there's 10 questions. And we can see question number 1 is, briefly tell me about yourself. And below this, we have question coaching. Not all questions have that are in the interview tool have this, but when you click question coaching, you'll see a video, and below it is text. And this will just kind of elaborate on what the question is, why it's being asked, and tips on how best to answer that question. And the video is a moderator or coach that will read that text to you. So if you prefer to hear it from someone speaking to you, you can press the play button and see that as well. So when we close out of that, we can see the other questions in the interview a couple different ways. If we click this down arrow here, we can see the list of questions that are included in this interview. And if you wanted to come back to this first question, you can, if you wanted to answer question number 4 first, you can do so. And you can navigate between by either selecting the questions there or pressing the previous and next question buttons. And so when you're ready for the practice interview, what you will do is you'll go ahead and press this start interview, and it'll record your responses. So when we press this button here, it will create a copy of that interview. And so we can now add our answers. And so we had briefly tell me about yourself. And if we click this add answer button here, we'll see that we have several different options to answer the question. So we can provide text. We can record an audio and video version. We can record just an audio clip. If we had a link to an audio or video file, we could do that here. Or if you had a file that you wanted to upload, you can add it here as well. Now, for practicing interview, you're probably going to want to, pick one of these 2 up here so you can hear and see yourself, answering the question. So recording audio and video and recording audio only is, what I would recommend, answering those as well. So we'll just go ahead, and for this, we'll just do record audio only. Now, I don't know if when I shared my screen here, you'll be able to hear this playback, but we'll get to that in a moment. So when you click the option there, you'll see, a sign for record audio. And so when we press record audio, you may be asked, that skillsfirst.com wants to use your microphone. Go ahead and allow that. And so then we have the kind of recorder feature here. And so we see, our mic over here. And as I'm talking, there's a very faint blue line moving up and down. But when we're ready to record our answer to this question, we'll press this red record button. And then once we're done, we'll click that button again to stop that recording. So I'm just going to go ahead and click this now. And we can see it's counting down. So this is a test of me answering the interview question here. So we'll click that to stop recording. If we want to play it back, we can. All right, so I'm not sure if you heard that, but I certainly did. It may be, again, the way I had shared the Zoom screen here. But what you can do is if you wanted to record again, if when you play back your answer, if you wanted to try this again, you could press record and answer the question again. But once you are satisfied with your answer and you want to save it, you'll go ahead and press this Save Media button in the corner here. And we'll get a message that this has been saved. So we'll click Done. And then once we're back in the interview here, we will get this up a little bit more. We will see that there's this video player here now. And when we press play, we'll see that it was, the 8 seconds. That was how long my test answer was. So we can, we have that, our answer saved right here, along with the interview question. And if you wanted to add a transcript to this, so you could, just have that information there, that response there, and you can, read it, say it out loud. And at least, for me, when I'm reading through things, or, if it's a document or an article that I'm working on, it's just best to kind of hear things out loud, as you say it, and that way you can kind of go back and revise and edit your answer. And so reading it and speaking it and hearing it out loud, that's something I would recommend too, with practicing and answering interview questions. But you can add a transcript there and just type your answer to what that was. Yep. And once we add that, we'll see that it's just right below the video. Additionally, we can add media comments. We can add a audio and video file. We can add a audio file, or we can upload a file. And this is really for, I think some of these media comments for if you wanted feedback from somebody else, and we'll get to how to share this with somebody else momentarily. Additionally, comments can be added, text, they can be added here as well, and you can add notes below the interview question. Let's see, so that's how we can select a interview that has a set of questions that are in place, but you can also create your own interview, which I do want to show how you can do so. So in this, what we call, breadcrumb trail here, how we got to this part within the interview. If we go back and select interviews, we can see that there's, browse interviews and add interviews. And if we wanted to create our own interview, we'll click add interview and we'll give it a name. So we'll give it interview, today's date. If we wanted to add a description, we could do so as well. But once we click save, we'll then see that the name of the interview is here, and we can begin to add questions. And so when we press the add questions button, a window will pop up here, and we can see that there's over 12,000 questions. And we can search through questions by entering keywords. Over to the left here, we can also filter questions by occupation, by competencies as well, different skills and abilities, programs that we're familiar with. This can be added there. And then we also have type of interview question. We open type here. And additionally, we have the interview question answers with and without the, sorry, this filter here, with interview question coaching and without question coaching. And that was where we see those hints and tips on how best to answer those questions. But as you're filtering through and searching through these keywords, once you find the questions that you'd like to add, you simply check those boxes. And once you are done making your selections, you'll click the Done button. And we'll see that those questions have been added here. So we see those 3 questions have been added there, and we can go about answering them. All right, and a couple more things I wanted to add. So that's how you can create your interview from the existing set of questions. So one of the features I wanted to add or show you too is we can share this. If we click share, if we wanted to get somebody's feedback from a friend, or if we were working with a career coach, we could get their feedback as well. And so when we click this icon here have that arrow, we'll have share interview with a viewer who will only have access to view the interview and answers. And then where it says permissions with, we'll click this organization, people groups, and change it to anybody with a link. And then that way we have a link that we can copy and paste and send it to someone to review, and they can provide their feedback as well. And so that was, I know, a very quick kind of tour of the interview prep tool. I did want to very quickly also share where you can find more information about the interview prep tool and some of the other features in Skills First. So back on that IllinoisWorkNet.com, that homepage, if we open up the menu and click qualify for jobs, and then we'll select the resume writing guide. And the resume writing guide, this has this has articles and resources on how to, every step in the resume writing process, from creating it to writing it to organizing it to sharing it and so forth. So I definitely recommend checking out the resume writing guide if you haven't already. And you can navigate through these slides. This is the first one here, by selecting these arrows or this menu between these arrows. And so just kind of quickly going through the resume writing guide, we have getting prepared to write your resume, start writing, customizing your resume, preparing for an interview, and resume builder tools, which when we click learn more, we'll open up an article here. And within this, we cover those different tools and features that are included in Skills First. So we have the resume builder, the cover letter builder, the portfolio builder, the interview prep, and the elevator pitch. And when you click on these hyperlinks, it'll open up an article page that'll talk more about that tool. And for each of those tools that were listed in the previous article, there's also an instructional handout and a short video on how to navigate and use that tool as well. And the remaining slides in the resume writing guide, we just have more resources on resume writing for articles and videos, as well as social media resources for individuals as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kirsten, I believe, for Q&A. So if there's any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, David and Fred, for this information. I think it's relevant. The information that Fred gave to us and presented to us was relevant for not only ourselves in the workforce, but also for our clients and our students and our title partners on the front lines and within our titles. And then, this tool, I think, can be utilized so much. Like I said, I utilize it in the classroom with my students just to kind of introduce them to this tool and let them know about this resource that's available to them throughout their whole entire education and workforce kind kind of journey that they're starting by being in my class. So I'm just so excited that we were able to present this information to everybody today. Feel free to type any questions or comments in the chat for myself, Fred, or David regarding any of the information today. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we're closing out today. Just a couple of housekeeping items as we're closing out today. This session was recorded, and so we will have that up on the Illinois Workforce Academy website within about 48 hours. And then tomorrow you will receive a post webinar email that will have a follow-up survey and the link to the recording where the slide decks will be housed as well. Fred has graciously supplied us with a handout also. So you can access the handout, Fred's slides, and my slides and David's slides. You'll have access to everything from the webinar. If you have a colleague or somebody you think could really benefit from this information that was not able to attend today, you can feel free to send that on. And yeah, I think that's all I have today. Fred or David, did you have any last remarks?
I do not. No, thank you everybody for joining. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Illinois WorkNet.
Yeah, and I just like to add, I hope that this was helpful for people. Hopefully you've got some takeaways that you can utilize as you go forth, as you support other job seekers. And if you've got some potential interviewees out there, good luck. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we're getting a lot of thank yous for the presentation information. Also, feel free to reach out to Illinois WorkNet or reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. If you have any questions following the session, whether they're for me or David or Fred, I can always put you into contact with one of us. So again, we really appreciate you joining us this afternoon or this morning. I'm getting my time all mixed up. And I'm going to go ahead and close this out because I don't see any questions in the chat. I think we had a very robust discussion, so we must have answered all the questions. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.